I am Andre, just your average guy in his mid-30s who never thought my ordinary life would take such an unexpected turn. For 8 years, I believed my marriage to Sophia was everything I needed, until the night she suggested opening our marriage with those words that cut deeper than any knife. It's not like you'll have girls lining up for you. Anyway. That comment shattered something inside me, but little did either of us know how completely wrong she would turn out to be. Let me know where you're watching from. Hit that like and subscribe button. If you want to see how I went from being the husband nobody wanted to the man everyone seems to notice. I always considered myself pretty ordinary. As a software engineer, I spent my days behind a computer screen, solving problems and writing code. Not exactly the kind of career that makes you the life of the party, but I enjoyed the challenges and took pride in my work. My appearance matched my profession: practical glasses, comfortable clothes, and a haircut that was more functional than fashionable. I never stood out in a crowd, and I was okay with that. Sophia and I met during our junior year of college. She was studying marketing and was everything I was not: outgoing, popular, and stunningly beautiful. She had this laugh that could fill a room and a presence that drew people to her naturally. When we first met at a mutual friend's study group, I could barely form complete sentences around her. She was so far out of my league that I never imagined she would give me a second glance. But somehow, against all odds, we connected. Our first date was at a small coffee shop near campus. I had planned everything meticulously, researched the best coffee they served, found the quietest corner for conversation, even practiced topics to discuss to avoid awkward silences. Sophia later told me she found my nervous energy endearing. Our courtship was a series of thoughtfully planned dates. I would spend hours preparing for each one, finding interesting exhibitions at local museums, booking tables at restaurants that matched her tastes, even organizing a surprise picnic with all her favorite foods. Looking back, I realize I was doing most of the planning, most of the giving, but I was so enchanted by her that I never noticed the imbalance. After graduation, we moved in together, and 2 years later, we got married in a ceremony that was more elaborate than I would have chosen but made Sophia happy. The early years of our marriage were good, at least on the surface. We bought a small house in the suburbs, adopted a cat named Whiskers, and settled into a comfortable routine. As years passed, my career began taking off. A project I had been leading gained attention from upper management, and I started climbing the corporate ladder. Despite promotions and raises, I maintained my humble appearance and lifestyle. We upgraded to a slightly larger house, but I still drove my reliable sedan and wore the same style of comfortable clothes. Sophia, meanwhile, became increasingly fixated on social media. Her Instagram account grew steadily as she posted carefully curated photos of our home, our occasional vacations, and herself. She spent hours perfecting each image, obsessing over filters and captions. I noticed she was spending more time engaging online than with me, but I dismissed it as a harmless hobby. Our social dynamics became increasingly pronounced. At gatherings, Sophia would float from person to person, drawing everyone into her orbit with stories and laughter. I would typically find a corner with a few friends content to have deeper conversations with a smaller group. I was proud to see her shine, but sometimes felt invisible in her shadow. "How did you ever land someone like Sophia?" was a question I heard more than once, usually disguised as a joke from acquaintances or colleagues at company parties. Each time the question reinforced my underlying insecurity that perhaps Sophia had settled for me, that I was somehow not quite enough. Despite the growing distance between us, I remained dedicated to making our marriage work. I planned date nights, weekend getaways, and small surprises to keep the spark alive. If Sophia seemed less enthusiastic about these efforts, I told myself she was just tired or distracted. I convinced myself that all marriages go through phases, and ours was no different. It was a Tuesday evening in October when everything changed. I had been working late on a project deadline, something that had become more common as my responsibilities at work increased. When I finally made it home around 7:30, Sophia had prepared dinner. A rare occurrence that should have been my first clue something was up. "How was your day?" I asked, loosening my tie. As I sat down at our dining table, "The lasagna looked good," and I was hungry after the long day. Interesting, Sophia replied, pouring herself a generous glass of wine. I was listening to this podcast about modern relationships, and they were discussing open marriages. I nodded absently, serving myself a portion of lasagna. What about them? Well, they were saying how they can actually strengthen some relationships, bringing new energy, new experiences. She took a sip of her wine, watching me carefully over the rim of her glass. What do you think about something like that? The fork froze halfway to my mouth. For us, you mean? Why not? Sophia shrugged, as if suggesting we try a new restaurant, rather than fundamentally altering our marriage. We have been together for a long time. Things get stale. I set down my fork, my appetite suddenly gone. Are you unhappy with me? With us? Not unhappy, she said quickly. Just curious. Wondering what else is out there. Do you never wonder? Truthfully, I had not. Despite our issues, I had remained faithful, in both body and mind. The concept of being with someone else had never seriously crossed my mind. I do not know, Sophia. This is a big step. Most couples who try this end up divorced. She rolled her eyes slightly. Those are couples who were already having problems. We are solid. This would just be for fun to explore. I hesitated, trying to understand where this was coming from. Are you? Have you already met someone you are interested in? No, she said, but too quickly. It is not about specific people. It is about possibilities. We went back and forth for a while, me asking questions, her providing answers that seemed rehearsed, as if she had been preparing for this conversation. As the discussion continued, I could feel my stomach tightening with each passing minute. Then came the moment that would change everything. Look, Sophia said, clearly growing frustrated with my hesitation. Let's be real. It is not like you will have girls lining up for you anyway. This would benefit me more obviously, but you might get lucky too. And would not it be nice for both of us to have some new experiences? The room seemed to tilt slightly. Her words hung in the air between us, impossible to take back. I felt as if I had been punched in the gut, but somehow managed to keep my expression neutral. I see was all I could say. Sophia immediately realized she had crossed a line. That came out wrong. I just meant that you are not exactly putting yourself out there. You know, with how you dress and everything. But her attempt to backpedal only made it worse. The message was clear. She thought she was settling for me, that she could do better, and now she wanted permission to prove it. I excused myself from the table and spent the next hour in our home office, ostensibly working but actually just staring at my computer screen, replaying her words in my head. When I finally went to bed, Sophia was already asleep, or pretending to be. That night was one of the longest of my life. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, contemplating my worth, not just as a husband, but as a man. Had I been deluding myself all these years? Was I really so unappealing that my own wife thought nobody else would want me? The questions circled in my mind like vultures. The next day, I called my best friend Jason during my lunch break and asked if we could meet for a drink after work. Jason had been my roommate in college and had known both Sophia and me since the beginning of our relationship. We met at a quiet bar downtown. After ordering our drinks, I recounted the previous night's conversation, including Sophia's devastating comment. Jason's reaction was immediate and visceral. She said, "What, dude, that's messed up." "But is she wrong?" I asked, voicing my deepest insecurity. Jason looked at me like I had grown a second head. "Are you serious right now, Andre? You're a catch. You're smart, successful, loyal, and a genuinely good guy. Just because you're not some Instagram model doesn't mean you're not attractive." His words helped, but the damage had been done. Still, our conversation gave me something to think about. Jason pointed out that maybe this was an opportunity, not just to date other people, but to rediscover my own value. After several more days of discussion and soul-searching, I agreed to Sophia's proposal with specific ground rules: honesty about who we were seeing, regular check-ins about our feelings, and the option to close the marriage, again, if either of us became uncomfortable. That very night, she started updating her dating profiles, taking new selfies, and messaging people. Her excitement was palpable, and painful to witness. It was clear she had been thinking about this for some time. As I watched her prepare to enter the dating world, I made a quiet promise to myself. I would not enter this new arrangement just to salvage my wounded pride. I would use it as an opportunity to become the best version of myself, not for Sophia, not for potential dates, but for me. My approach to our new arrangement was methodical, much like how I tackled problems at work. I didn't rush to dating apps or bars. Instead, I focused first on rediscovering myself. Jason proved invaluable during this process. The weekend after Sophia and I finalized our open marriage agreement, he took me shopping. "Your clothes aren't bad," he explained as we browsed through a department store I'd never have entered on my own. "They just don't show who you really are." I'd always bought clothes for practicality. Neutral colors, durable fabrics, comfortable fits. Jason pushed me to try styles that felt more intentional. Not flashy designer labels, but well-fitted jeans that actually complemented my build button-downs in colors that brought out my eyes, and a leather jacket that somehow made me stand taller. "You're not trying to become someone else," Jason said as I examined my reflection with uncertainty. "You're just letting the outside match the quality of what's inside." Next came the haircut. The stylist Jason recommended spent almost an hour asking questions about my lifestyle, personality, and preferences before even touching a pair of scissors. The result wasn't drastically different. I still looked like me, but somehow better. The cut framed my face in a way that highlighted features I'd never particularly noticed before. Meanwhile, Sophia was already going on dates. She would come home late, sometimes slightly tipsy, with stories about interesting men she'd met. Each tale was like a small cut, but I maintained my composure, nodding and asking appropriate questions, as if we were just roommates discussing our social lives. 2 weeks into our open marriage, I joined a gym near my office. I'd never been particularly athletic, but I established a routine of going before work 3 days a week. I hired a personal trainer for the first month to help develop a program that worked for my body type and goals. I wasn't aiming to become a bodybuilder, just to feel stronger and more comfortable in my own skin. The physical changes were gradual, but the mental shifts happened faster. Something about taking control of these aspects of my life gave me a confidence I hadn't realized I was missing. I started speaking up more in meetings at work, offering ideas I might previously have kept to myself. My first venture into dating came from an unexpected source. Alicia worked in the marketing department of my company. We'd collaborated on projects, but never socially. One day, after a particularly successful presentation, she suggested grabbing coffee sometime to discuss some ideas she had for future collaborations. Coffee turned into lunch, which evolved into conversations that had nothing to do with work. Alicia was intelligent, witty, and genuinely interested in my thoughts. When I finally explained my situation, the open marriage arrangement, I expected her to make an excuse and leave. Instead, she considered it thoughtfully. "That's unconventional," she said, "but I appreciate your honesty. I'd still like to see where this goes as long as we keep communication open." Our first official date was to an interactive science museum, something I'd suggested based on a comment she'd made about loving hands-on learning experiences. The evening was filled with laughter, fascinating exhibits, and conversations that flowed effortlessly. For the first time in years, I felt truly seen and appreciated for exactly who I was. At the end of the night, when Alicia kissed me goodbye, I felt a spark I thought had died long ago. Driving home, I realized I was smiling. Not because someone had chosen me, but because I had created this opportunity through my own growth. When I arrived home, Sophia was on the couch, scrolling through her phone. She looked up with mild surprise. "You look happy. Good night." "It was," I replied simply. "How about yours?" She shrugged. "The guy canceled last minute. Something about a work emergency." I nodded sympathetically but couldn't help noticing the contrast to my earlier days when I would have bent over backward to avoid canceling on Sophia, work emergency or not. As weeks passed, a surprising pattern emerged. My dating calendar began filling up. Not just with Alicia, but with other women I met through various channels. A friend of Jason's introduced me to Tara, a veterinarian with a passion for hiking. I matched with Diana on a dating app, a literature professor, who challenged my thinking in the most exhilarating ways. Sophia's initial success, meanwhile, seemed to be waning. The first flush of attention she received on dating apps had faded. Men who eagerly arranged first dates often disappeared after meeting her. She began coming home earlier, making excuses about boring conversations or lack of chemistry. I never pressed her for details, just as she rarely asked about my experiences. But I could sense her growing frustration. One evening, as I was getting ready for a dinner with Sophia lingered in the doorway of our bedroom, watching me button my shirt. "You're going out a lot these days," she observed, her tone casual, but her expression tight. "About twice a week," I confirmed. "Not so different from you in the beginning." She nodded slowly. "That's a nice shirt." "Got it a few weeks ago," I replied, adjusting my collar. "You've been different lately," she continued. "More confident." I met her eyes in the mirror. "I feel different. In a good way." She seemed about to say something more, but instead mumbled something about having a quiet night in with a movie. As I left, I caught a glimpse of her expression. Confusion mixed with something that looked surprisingly like regret. That night, with Alicia, over plates of excellent Thai food, I realized something profound. I was enjoying my life. Not just the dating aspects, but the entire process of rediscovery. I had found a renewed interest in hobbies I'd set aside years ago. Playing guitar, photography, even rock climbing with Jason on weekends. More importantly, I'd discovered that my authentic, caring nature, the very qualities I thought made me boring or overlooked, were actually deeply attractive to the right people. I didn't need to become someone else to be valued. I just needed to value myself first. The tension at home had been building for weeks, but everything came to a head at Jason's birthday party. He had rented out a local brewery and invited about 50 friends, including several people I had met during my recent social renaissance. Sophia had initially been reluctant to attend, but ultimately decided to come along. She spent extra time on her appearance that evening, wearing a new dress I hadn't seen before, and styling her hair in an elaborate updo. I complimented her sincerely as we drove to the brewery. The party was in full swing when we arrived. Jason greeted us, warmly giving me a knowing look when he saw Sophia's effort to impress. "Glad you both could make it," he said, handing us each a craft beer. Within minutes of arriving, I was drawn into conversations with various friends, both old and new. Alicia was there. We had reached a comfortable place where we enjoyed each other's company without expectations. Tara had also been invited, and she waved at me from across the room. Sophia stayed close to me initially, her hand gripping my arm a little too tightly. But as the evening progressed and more people approached me to chat, she drifted to the bar where she nursed a series of cocktails while watching me interact with others. I was in the middle of a conversation with Alicia and two of Jason's co-workers when Tara joined our group. She had just returned from a veterinary conference and was sharing a funny story about a particularly dramatic cat she had treated. Everyone was laughing, myself included, when I felt a presence behind me. "Looks like you're having fun," Sophia said, her voice tight and slightly slurred. She had clearly had several drinks by this point. "We are," I agreed, turning to include her in the circle. "Sophia, have you met everyone? This is Tara, and these are Jason's colleagues, Mark and Rachel." Sophia barely acknowledged the introductions. "So which ones have you slept with?" she asked loudly, causing a sudden awkward silence to fall over our group. "Sophia," I said quietly, "let's go get some water." "No," she insisted, her voice rising. "I want to know. Is it her?" She pointed at Alicia. "Or her?" The finger swung toward Tara. "Or maybe both. You seem to have quite the fan club these days." The people around us were now trying to discreetly move away, pretending they couldn't hear the scene unfolding. Jason appeared at my side, having noticed the commotion. "Everything okay here?" he asked, his expression concerned. "No, everything is not okay," Sophia snapped. "My husband, who no woman was supposed to look twice at, is suddenly Mr. Popular, while I'm spending Friday nights alone watching Netflix." Her voice had risen to the point where most of the party had gone quiet, everyone pretending not to stare, while absolutely watching the drama unfold. The humiliation on her face was quickly converting to fury. This isn't fair, she continued, tears now streaming down her face, smearing her carefully applied makeup. This was supposed to be for me, not for you. In that moment, with perfect clarity, I understood. The open marriage had never been about strengthening our relationship or exploring together. It had been Sophia's exit strategy, a way to find someone new while keeping me as a safety net. But the plan had backfired spectacularly. Rather than engaging further in this public setting, I simply said, "I think we should continue this at home. I'm going to call us a ride." I turned to Jason, apologizing for the disruption to his birthday celebration. He squeezed my shoulder supportively and whispered, "Call me tomorrow." The ride home was silent and tense. Sophia stared out the window, occasionally wiping tears, while I tried to process what had just happened and what it meant for us. Once home, the real confrontation began. "I want to close the marriage," Sophia announced as soon as our front door closed behind us. "This experiment is over." I removed my jacket slowly, hanging it carefully in the closet. "Why now?" I asked, keeping my voice measured. "Because it's destroying us," she insisted. "Can't you see that? This was a mistake. It was your idea," I reminded her. "And if I remember correctly, you weren't concerned about it destroying anything when you thought I wouldn't have girls lining up for me." The reference to her hurtful comment made her flinch. "I didn't mean that. I was wrong to say it." "But you meant it when you said it," I countered. "And that's the problem, Sophia. You never really saw me. You thought you were settling for me." Her silence was confirmation enough. "You wanted an open marriage because you thought you deserved better than me." I continued. "You wanted permission to look for my replacement while keeping the stability I provided." "That's not true," she protested weakly. "Isn't it? Then why are you so upset now? If this was really about mutual exploration and strengthening our relationship, you'd be happy that I'm having positive experiences." Sophia collapsed onto the couch, her composure finally breaking completely. I thought. I don't know what I thought. That maybe I'd find someone more exciting, more social, someone who matches me better. "And did you?" I asked, already knowing the answer. "No," she admitted. "Most of the guys were shallow or only interested in one thing. None of them listened like you do, or remembered details, or actually cared about my day." She looked up at me, mascara streaking her cheeks. "And meanwhile, you're thriving. Everyone wants you. How did this happen?" I sat in the armchair across from her. "I changed, but not in the way you might think. I didn't become someone else. I just finally recognized my own worth." Over the next hour, we had the most honest conversation of our marriage. Sophia admitted that she had grown restless and taken me for granted. She had convinced herself that her dissatisfaction stemmed from me being inadequate rather than from her own unrealistic expectations. "I want us to try again," she pleaded. "We can close the marriage, go to counseling, start fresh." But as I looked at her, I realized something had fundamentally shifted. The scales had fallen from my eyes, and I could now see the fundamental imbalance that had always existed between us. I had loved her more, tried harder, compromised more, and while I didn't hate her for it, I couldn't unsee it. "I think I need space," I said finally. "I'll stay with Jason for a few days, while we both think things through." The next morning, I packed a bag and called Jason, who immediately offered his spare room. Sophia alternated between anger, bargaining, and tears as I prepared to leave, but I remained firm in my decision. Over the following weeks, Sophia launched a full campaign to win me back. She sent thoughtful texts, left handwritten notes at Jason's for me, even showed up at my workplace with lunch. Each gesture mirrored the effort I had put into our relationship for years. Effort that had largely gone unappreciated until it was withdrawn. I wasn't cruel or dismissive. I thanked her for each gesture, met her for occasional conversations, and genuinely considered whether our marriage could be salvaged. But with each passing day, the clarity I had found only strengthened. Our final serious conversation happened at a neutral location. A quiet coffee shop halfway between Jason's place and our home. Sophia had come prepared with notes about counselors, books on rebuilding trust, and even a vacation she thought might help us reconnect. I listened patiently until she finished. Then I said, Sophia, I appreciate everything you're doing, but I need to ask you something important. Do you actually want me, or do you just hate the idea of not being chosen? The question hung between us. Her hesitation before answering told me everything I needed to know. I think we've grown in different directions, I said gently. And I think we'd both be happier finding partners who truly see and appreciate us for who we are, not who they want us to be. Her tears came again, but this time there was a resignation in them. On some level, she knew I was right. 2 weeks later, I moved into my own apartment and filed for divorce. That was 6 months ago. Today I'm sitting in my new apartment, a place that reflects who I truly am. There are bookshelves filled with science fiction and philosophy texts. My guitar has a place of honor near the window where natural light streams in. Photos from recent hiking trips decorate the walls. The journey hasn't been easy, but it's been transformative. I've learned that self-worth isn't determined by someone else's assessment of your value. It comes from within, from knowing who you are, and refusing to apologize for it. I'm still seeing Alicia, though. We're taking things slowly. Neither of us is in a rush to define what we have. The difference is that this relationship feels balanced. We both choose each other actively every day rather than from habit or convenience. Sophia and I finalized our divorce last month. She's moved to another city for a fresh start. I wish her well and hope she finds what she's looking for, though I suspect she needs to look within before seeking it from someone else. The irony isn't lost on me that her attempt to find someone better ultimately led me to become better. Not for her or anyone else, but for myself. Her hurtful words intended to diminish me accidentally set me free. If there's anything I could tell someone going through something similar, it's this: never let someone else's perception of you define your reality. Sometimes the people closest to us have the most outdated versions of who we are. And sometimes, losing what you thought you wanted leads directly to finding what you truly deserve. So I'm curious. Have you ever had someone underestimate you, only to find that their doubt became your motivation? Leave a comment below with your story. If this resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to hear more stories about personal growth and relationship insights. Share this with someone who might need to be reminded of their own worth. Thank you for listening, and remember, the most important relationship you'll ever have is the one with yourself.